Juan, would you mind starting with the roll call, please?
Sure. Stephanie Sutton.
Here.
Bob Ackerman.
Here. I have to turn my ears on.
Christian Newman.
Here.
Thomas Hawkins.
Here.
James Blythe.
Here.
Sophia Corregero.
Here.
Jason Hurst.
Here.
Tina Certain.
Great, thank you. We have almost a full team. Adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, perhaps with a change?
Madam Chair, I move the City Plan Board adopt the agenda as presented with 2 modifications. First, I propose that we move item it's agenda item 210571, petition PB 2100159 to December 16th, date certain, which is our next meeting.
Okay.
And the second modification is to move item 210570, which is petition PB 2100158, to that same meeting, December 16th.
Okay, do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Ms. Corregaro. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. We have an amended agenda. Next on our agenda is recognition of Mr. Newman, who is spending his last meeting with us this evening, hoping to move on to bigger and better things, I suppose. So I just wanted to express my appreciation for you being on the board and serving with us and being our vice chair this last year. It's been great to work with you, and we really appreciate your input and your background and your perspective, having been a long-term Gainesville resident. So thank you for being here with us. Would anyone else like to share any thoughts on Christian before we present him with his plaque?
I'd just like to say that I appreciate your somewhat relentless attention to affordable housing, which I think has been something that we've been trying to bring to the forefront, and you've been a good proponent for that, and I very much appreciate it, and I think that will be missed, maybe.
Well, do I get to say something first, or?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I want to thank all my city plan board members now and sort of in the past. It's been it's been really interesting to be on the board, and I think that all the board members that we've had since I've been on, it's been amazing. I think we have a diversity of experiences, diversity of thoughts about things, and I really feel like the decisions that have come out of the city plan board while I've been on it have been really good. Of course, that's obviously biased, but I do feel like we've made some really good decisions. And as someone who didn't, it was kind of new to this, taking this position. I mean, it's pretty inspiring, honestly, that that our government does work in this way, and obviously, we all get a lot of grief at certain points in time, sometimes deserved, but I think as a general statement, we're really trying to sort of make the best decisions we can possible, and that's all that we can really ask for. So I want to thank everybody for their support, and again for the city staff. Which again, to a certain degree, I know is a thankless job too. And again, we really sort of recognize all the hard work that sort of has gone into this, particularly, all the wackiness that we've been through with COVID. So it's been pretty amazing that we've been able to continue to move on, which I think, is, kudos goes to the city and the staff. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Christian. And I have a plaque for you to remember us all by.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You can hang it on your wall.
I shall.
You don't get to leave yet.
Nope, you gotta stick it out. I was asking them before the meeting, like, why are we letting him off the hook this week when we have a workshop next week?
Ends, to make sure he doesn't.
Well, I know some others got away previously before we could give the award, so I understand the reason you want to do
Yeah, otherwise you'll never get it.
Thank you.
So thank you, Christian. You've been a great member of the board. We've really enjoyed working with you.
Thanks so much.
Now you can watch us on Channel 12 once a
Exactly.
month. Okay, can I, next up, approval of the minutes, and we actually have a couple of different minutes to approve. I don't know if we want to do them separately, if staff feels like it's okay if we make one motion for all of them. I think one motion for all of them looks like it's okay. All right, so can I get a motion to approve the minutes, please? There's July, August, and September all attached.
I move that we approve the minutes from the board meetings in July, August, and September of 2021.
Okay, do we have a
Second.
second? Mr. Ackerman, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All of our minutes are approved. We should be caught up now. Mr. Castillo, could you read the announcement into the record for us, please?
Section 30-3.3 of the Land Development Code establishes the Plan Board, including its membership, rules of procedure, and functions, powers, and duties. The Plan Board is advisory to the City Commission on most planning petitions. Appeals of Plan Board decisions concerning special use permits are to a hearing officer within 30 calendar days of the decision. See Section 30-3.58C of the Land Development Code. The procedure for an appeal is set forth in Section 30-3.58.
Thank you. Is anyone here to give public comment? Mr. Diedenbach, I assume you're here for something on the agenda. Okay, and we don't have the phone line this evening, is that correct? That's right. Okay, great. So seeing no public comment, we will move on to our new business. Mr. Castillo, can you read the first item into the record?
Item number 210572, City Plan Board amend and update the City of Gainesville Engineering Design and Construction Manual and amend the City of Gainesville Land Development Code to adopt the City of Gainesville Engineering Design and Construction Manual by reference, text change to allow adoption by resolution, future updated versions of the engineering design construction manual.
Thank you. And I'm not sure.
Madam Chair.
Yep, Mr. Calderon.
Madam Chair, members of the City Plan Board, good evening. Lawrence Calderon with Department of Sustainable Development. This petition is a request to make updates to the Engineering Design and Construction Manual and to make a code change. The presentation will be done primarily by Gail Morey, who would now take over and share her screen, so I will stop sharing now.
Thank you. Okay, and your presentation.
Good
is
evening,
up.
everyone. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Gail.
Sure. Well, on behalf of Public Works, I'd like to thank you for allowing us time to go over the what we call the EDCM, the Engineering Design and Construction Manual changes. With me are our city engineer, Brian Singleton, and Jay Brown, the president and principal engineer of JB Pro. So the EDCM history, this is the fourth iteration of the EDCM. The first one was in 1998. It was kind of a conglomeration of a variety of things, including for subdivision design. There have been a couple other changes since 2013, which was adopted by resolution, and 2015, which was modified to be adoption by ordinance. And I'm just rather pointing those out because the 2021 version that we are proposing is to go back to adoption by resolution. I'll talk a little bit about why in another slide. But one of our key focuses on this EDCM was to revise the document to make it clearer, more concise, and briefer. The purpose and applicability of the design manual is to establish design standards and specifications for construction of any improvements within the city. It complements goals and objectives identified within the comprehensive plan and the requirements underneath the Land Development Code, chapters 23, 26, and 30. So the update process took us a little longer than we anticipated originally. It took us about 2 years. 2020 was a bit of a hit or miss for us with COVID and people being out, just the general kind of getting more into sync with communication. But we presented a revised manual in February 2021 to the development community. That involved primarily the consulting engineers, the geotechnical consultants, the BANSIF group. A few of the developers were included. I don't know that a lot of them participated necessarily in the meetings, but we did have a few. Our intense meetings, we started in March, and we met from March to May. We had various meetings to discuss the proposed changes. We went chapter by chapter. The key effort there was to ensure that the development community had a chance to engage in the review and discussion of all the changes. And I thought overall the process went well with lots of participation by the development community. The insight and the thoughtful, constructive comments that they contributed to the manual, I really thought made the overall process really helpful, and I feel like we got a really good product, and Jay could probably speak to that if he would like as well, to kind of answer maybe what he saw, and obviously Stephanie, you participated in several of those meetings. So we finished in June. We revised the manual based on all of the commentary that we had. Late June, we did one more meeting with a final revised version. We made a couple minor tweaks over the month of July, but the last of the revisions were completed in August. We did a little presentation to the ASCE Gainesville chapter, and then today we are here just to review kind of what we did overall. So as far as a broad overview, one of the key things we looked at was incorporating language for the city engineer to approve variances, some final interpretations of the manual, kind of make it a little bit more flexible for the city engineer to make some decisions and be able to make some interpretations. We introduced a log to track interpretations and approval for future incorporation. We reduced the overall length of the document from 10 chapters to 8. As well, we removed a lot of redundancies from the document, just some shared language that was in code and some shared language that was in DOT. It didn't need to be in both places, and that always allows a chance to have conflict. So we reduced all of those. The key changes that were involved in this process, we created a new design memo process. It's similar to DOT's process, where we would inform basically the design community as interpretations or corrections are made. We will send out a design memo so that everyone will be aware. It'll be posted online. And then as we go to make changes, which we anticipate doing a manual update every couple of years, we would take those design memos and incorporate them into the new manual. So hopefully the next time we do an update, it'll be much shorter and succinct effort. The stormwater chapter was a major reorganization. We added some potential exemptions that I think a lot of people will like. One of that is maintenance of pavement. So I think that'll be something that in general will help. Before, some of that was considered a redevelopment. And so you would have to provide stormwater for some of the older facilities, even though they were just trying to maintain their pavement. We also created an exemption for accessible parking space improvements that were associated with building permits. We're introducing a new section for critical facilities that basically keep critical facilities out of the 500-year floodplain. For submittal requirements, we looked at just some expanded required notes and provided in detail all of those notes, so it should be fairly clear what needs to be added. We modified a little bit the as-built survey requirements. We also combined inspection permits, the requirements into the construction chapter, and we updated the exhibits. And those were the key changes. So this is a quick and brief presentation. Any questions? Brian and Jay and I are all here to answer any questions you might have.
Does anyone have questions for Gail? Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you talk a little bit more about the public engagement process? You mentioned Builder Association, development community. Have there been any public meetings with the public generally?
With the public generally, no, mostly just the development community. They were open to the public. We didn't necessarily advertise them publicly.
Okay.
Could you talk a little bit about Vision Zero implementation in the plan? I noticed that in the road and transportation section, it talks about implementing Vision Zero as a purpose of the roadway design section. Can you talk about how that was done and maybe some of the policies that are in there that you think implement Vision Zero or are consistent with it?
I'm actually not a transportation engineer, Brian. Is there any chance? I know that's John's chapter. He kind of oversaw that particular chapter.
Good evening, Brian Singleton, city engineer. Just one thing to note, the document is a more of a technical document to discuss what the designs have to encompass technically, and not necessarily what elements need to go into the design or the look and feel of projects. But in regards to Vision Zero, when we review the plans as they're submitted, we'll be looking at all the safety elements that are required to go into roadway design, such as, encouraging the lower speeds, the narrower lane risks, the visual friction, vertical deflections, horizontal deflections, all with the premise of ensuring that we equitably look at the bicycle and pedestrian travel opposed to strictly the vehicle travel. And hopefully that answers the question regarding Vision Zero.
It does. The clarification on it not necessarily being a document about how projects look and feel makes sense. One reason that I ask is I know some documents so for example, the MUTCD and the Green Book don't require crosswalk markings, even if other markings on the roadway, in other aspects of the roadway are marked, we still have unmarked crosswalks. It seems like the kind of thing, we don't have any other document that's a rule document the city promulgates that would give instructions on things like crosswalk marking, for example. This would be the only document that would cover that kind of information. Did any of the meetings or planning information kind of incorporate the Department of Mobility staff that work on Vision Zero issues to sort of talk about what things would only live in this document if there were city policies at all that we might want to include?
Yes, Department of Mobility was involved all along with from January 2020. They were in our initial meetings, and primarily Scott participated, but Debbie Leisner also was involved.
And did any of these issues come up there?
Yes, I do believe that some of that Vision Zero language was input to the document based on Scott's comments, as well as some of the requirements throughout that roadway design section, if memory serves me correct.
So like the objective statement mentioning Vision Zero?
Right, that's a new statement. Vision Zero was not in the 2015 document. It got introduced into the 2021 document.
Okay. I have another question that might be more appropriate for Mr. Persons. I don't know, but I'm happy to hear y'all's answer. We have lots of comp plan policies related to transportation network design that seem like they would be appropriate for implementation in the document. One is a requirement for a gridded street network. So we've got comp plan policies in the transportation element that say the street network that we develop should be gridded, which is something that we would accomplish either through the city building roads or through private subdivisions. And we've also got requirements, they're in the comp plan, so they're somewhat general for landscaping along roadways. Neither of those sets of policies are currently implemented in the land development regulations. I would assume the place to implement them would be in a document like this, because it gives instructions on subdivision design and because it gives instructions on city design for streets. But the language that we have, and I think Mr. Singleton did a great job sort of framing it as general and technical, not really giving information on how things look and feel. There's sort of no qualitative statements that, you know, that a planner might say, you know, would accomplish those policy intents from the comp plan. Can you talk about that a little bit? And when I read the document, my thinking was, well, this is horribly incomplete. We're not addressing all these comp plan policies that need to be addressed somewhere.
Yeah, I guess. Go ahead, Ryan.
And yeah, that's kind of the way I look at the document. It's implementing the technical side of what's in the comp plan and the land development code. So say for tree plantings, it's if you're required to plant this tree within this area, you have to, you know, have a tree well or a tree grate, or the tree has to be X amount of feet from a utility. It's those technical side of things and not necessarily provide X, Y, Z. So it really is a technical implementation of the code in the comp plan.
And I would just add, I think, to what Brian's saying, and I think I understand what you're saying. I think, and I would say, I guess from my perspective, and sort of thinking about how the EDCM and the code and comp plan intersect, I would say we do have standards in the code that implement to a point. Maybe not street design, but landscaping along new streets that are being built for a subdivision. So we have standards for street trees and things like that would apply to new construction of streets. Where maybe there is like a gap between the two is setting other sort of public street design elements. And I think that's sort of what you're getting at is outside of development, which is where the code sort of dictates, like what sort of document is out there that would dictate when the city's doing a street project and designing a street.
Yeah.
And that's where I do think that there is a little bit of a gap. We've sort of dipped, I'd say as a city, we've sort of dipped our toe in it a little bit with some of the like descriptive sort of street cross sections that we have in transect zones. And I think at one point along the line, several years ago, when we were when the code was being rewritten, the city had even sort of talked about having like dimensional standards that would have been like fairly detailed dimensional standards for new street design. And that is probably an area where like that's not covered by the EDCM. It's not covered by the code. I think today we probably default to the Green Book, but I think maybe that's sort of what you're getting at. And there is probably outside of a development, where we have a subdivision, and even the subdivision like street design, it is still by and large driven by Green Book standards because that's what we adopt here in the city. So there's not like a separate document that says this is how we should design streets, essentially. That's like a city-owned type of thing.
Is it? I mean, that seems like something we should have. Is it? I thought probably since 2013, which was too late in my tenure on the city commission to do anything about it, that the appropriate place for those kinds of rules was this document because it's called the Site and Subdivision Manual, right? If we're concerned about subdivision design and site plan design on a more detailed and granular level than matters for development review, right? For planners to deal with, it's more relevant for engineers doing the more detailed work.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like you're saying a gap does exist.
Yeah, and
isn't this the place to put that kind of stuff?
It's hard to say. I think there is a lot of push and pull between the code and the EDCM over time, and we've like kind of gone back and forth where we've had more stuff in the code, we pulled it out, put it in the design manual, and back and forth. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know if Brian has any thoughts about it, but I mean, yeah, there is times I think where that does come up, and when the city does undertake like a new road design, like typically there's a sort of a review process that goes into it in terms of like looking at, you know, the adjacent lane uses and some of that, but it is somewhat, I guess, ad hoc a little bit. So, yeah, I'm not sure that like, answers your question, but.
And if I can add, this document is more primarily for development applications. We have city delivered roadway projects. We're going through that, you know, open public involvement process where the community, you know, sees what we're designing and has an opportunity for feedback. When it comes to, say, cross-sectional elements for the local roadway network, when we're talking about subdivisions, you know, say providing cross-section or lane widths or bicycle lane widths, all that, the required elements such as bike lanes, sidewalk widths, street trees, that's all in the code. So as far as defining lane widths in this document, they're already being designed to the minimum, you know, 9-10-foot lanes. So, which is consistent with the Green Book. So trying to repeat some of those elements in the Green Book and this document just did not, it seemed to be, it opened the potential for conflicts. And then we are legally required to comply with the Green Book when it comes to roadway design. So we were trying not to repeat requirements in both documents.
Of the three things that I mentioned, I'm not familiar with the code provisions on landscaping. I don't know what they are. I know the land development code doesn't address crosswalk markings. And I know that the Green Book gives discretion as to whether crosswalks are marked. And you know, it'd be great for the city to have a policy that when it designs roadways, it'll mark crosswalks. And on the third one, and I think this is absolutely the biggest, is subdivision street network design. We've got comp plan policies that say we want safe street networks and gridded street networks. And we know that gridded street networks are safer. But we don't have any implementing language in the LDRs that tell us what a gridded street network is. The closest we get is we can't have segments longer than 1,000 feet, which doesn't, right? The way to, in the literature, they say if you want to get a gridded street network, you mandate block size or you mandate link and node density. They've got a lot of different ways that you can do it, but we don't have any of them. And it seems like the most appropriate document to have those kind of standards would be this one, because it is the document that folks use when they design plats. Is that, you know, it sounds like you're saying that we need something like that. I would agree. Kind of how do we what's the best process to take this document to get some of those necessary components in?
Yeah, I get oh, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, and I was skimming back through the code now and trying to see potentially where some of that interconnectivity language and gridded language is, and I think you're correct, and it might be mute in the code as well as the EDCM, and it would be an opportunity to add some of that language.
And I was just going to add, I think, as Brian's right, we do have some interconnectivity code provisions that apply to subdivisions, and it's sort of based on the number of lots. It is, and we went through this exercise actually back, I don't know, a couple of years ago when we were wrestling around with the county about drafting a JPA, and we were looking at county staff and my staff or our staff were looking at comparing code provisions for connectivity, and we actually have like almost identical connectivity provisions in both. And so Jeff Hayes, the county, we were talking about like, wouldn't it be great if we had like a link to node ratio and like a more predictable way to to achieve sort of connectivity in a way that's less, maybe less, has less opportunities for sort of politicalization. We did have a project not too long ago that where we did run into an issue with interconnectivity. Stephanie's laughing, and it does come up, sort of all the time. And so I guess from my perspective, whether it's in the code or in the EDCM, I'm relatively agnostic about. But I think there is an opportunity to have a more sort of predictable set of regulations for that. Only because negotiating cross access and some of these things is oftentimes not just difficult for staff, but difficult for the design engineer who's having to try to negotiate with other properties as well. And it would be it may be worthwhile to explore coming up with some more predictable standards for that.
And I definitely hear your concerns, and it is a comment that staff makes all the time about interconnectivity, whether it's a site or during the preliminary plat process, and ensuring there's cross connections and a gridded network and stubs to either existing properties that are developed or vacant properties that are undeveloped yet. So it is something we're looking at, but it might not be as black and white in the documents other than in the comp plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all. I want to hear everybody else's comments. Thank you for the indulgence of the time.
Okay, I have a couple thoughts. I'm not seeing any other lights. I think I have some concerns with how some of the changes to the stormwater section will impact the ability to do successful urban redevelopment and allow for affordable housing. I think some of the changes as far as limiting the amount of credit that you can get on a site for existing impervious concern me. It's very difficult, particularly on downtown sites and these bigger projects that we're seeing. It's very difficult to meet the existing underground stormwater system requirements without, going into the building area. And usually, in front of the site, you're dealing with utility conflicts, and it's very, very difficult to find enough space for underground systems as it is right now. And the proposed criteria make it a lot more difficult. So, I'm thinking about the city just approved another plan for Lot 10. We'll see where this one goes, but Lot 10 has a lot of existing impervious. And if we aren't going to allow them to get credit for that, we're going to have to create a stormwater, underground system that now is going to have 6 inches of freeboard for existing impervious area that the water management district would give you credit for. Now the city isn't going to. So I think I have concerns, that's a particular project that, is going to be moving forward. The city has a vested stake in that. It's been a long time coming. We've seen some failed proposals. I'd like to see this one move forward. So I think I have concerns about that. And Gail, I don't know if you can address that. I mean, it's not just cost, but it's area that we're going to need more of. And in my experience, it's difficult to find enough area as it is.
Yeah, so Stephanie, I'm not sure why you think we haven't changed any of the criteria for stormwater. It's still 1,000 new for water quality, 2,000 for water quality and quantity, and 4,000 redevelopment. That was here before. That's always been here for quite some time. That hasn't changed. So I'm not sure what.
It's different than the water management district, and I don't know
sure,
why.
It's always the water management district. We are one of the few entities, I will tell you, in the state that have a redevelopment criteria. It's to provide water quality to old areas that had been developed before the stormwater criteria started in 1982. So, but the 4,000 redevelopment criteria has been here since a very long time. I can tell you what year it was, but it was in the early 2000s. That hasn't changed. We're not changing anything.
And it's the implementation of the comp plan for our community to ensure we have improved water quality, especially in historic areas that don't provide any treatment. We want to ensure for the future that our water quality in the community continues to improve over time. So we just want to make sure that we have some kind of treatment as these historical areas redevelop that are fully impervious. The pre-post quantity is always going to remain the same, but we need to ensure that we have some type of water quality treatment moving forward.
So I think the biggest challenge is, in most of the projects that I have experience with, we end up doing a lot of the stormwater in the parking garage areas. This board has expressed some concerns with projects having too much parking, and we don't want to fill our downtown with parking garages. And so ideally, I think the vision for the city is not that every project has a parking garage where its underground stormwater system is. I think we'd like to get away from that. And projects, like the Hyatt that's being built downtown now, squeezing underground stormwater to treat the water quality that was necessary into the sidewalk area was very difficult. It had to be done around where utilities are coming in and everything else. So I'm just saying it's difficult criteria to meet and create a quality urban redevelopment project without having structured parking. That's where you're putting your stormwater in all cases. It really lends itself to that, and this board has expressed some concerns in the past about every project having their own structured parking.
Yeah, I think, Stephanie, the key things with the underground is that, you can't put underground underneath some sort of livable or inhabitable space. So that's why and there was a time, just so you know, that you couldn't even the district wasn't even allowing underground underneath the parking garages within the building. So that's evolved over some time where they've at least allowed that, as have we. But, as we build sites out like that in a big, all the way out to the property line, stormwater has to go somewhere. I mean, redevelopment, that clause has been here since before I got here. If we're going to improve water quality, it has to go somewhere. That's been something we've been talking about. We do have I think there's 5 or 6 credit basins. The one credit basin, Southwest Fifth Avenue, is already closed and sold out. So we still have Depot, and we still have Tumbling Creek, which Hyatt did take advantage of Depot, and they bought their water quality credits through them. So the only thing that they really had to address was the additional runoff in their stormwater system. So it was a smaller system. But yeah, it gets complicated. We agree. We understand that. And we try to be as flexible as we can during the review to help move these things along as best we can. I don't know it's a very urban environment. It's going to get tougher as we keep building. It's going to continue to get tougher.
And I think that's my concern is, I understand the need for water quality. I understand the need for that, but we have some pretty significant areas of this city, the Power District. We have Lot 10. We have a lot of the, industrial uses along South Main. I can see transitioning, over the next decade, over the next 2 decades. And so some of these stormwater requirements are a challenge to keeping that development, especially if we want affordable housing, coming into the Power District and some of these other areas. It's difficult to create affordable housing when your stormwater requirements are getting more stringent, and you can't, and the city doesn't have the capacity in city systems. And so it may just be something that, if the city wants to see those areas succeed, which I think it does, it may be something that Public Works just needs to think about. Where can we make the capacity for more credits? Maybe there needs to be, there's definitely potential users for water quality credits in certain areas of the city in the future. And so I don't know if that's something that you're thinking about. but the regulations are more stringent than just the water management district requires in some ways. And it can cause more expense and more challenges with designing sites in an urban setting.
Yeah, and Stephanie, I just want to make sure I qualify. I mean, we haven't changed the stormwater requirements. They've been different from the districts for a long time. So that's not there's no change with this manual. But we do agree that as development continues, it gets harder and harder especially if there's no parking that's going to be provided, and there's, if it's an entire livable first floor or commercial space first floor, you can't put an underground system under there. Neither us nor the district would allow that. So it would make for a challenge for sure. And we have talked about, are there other opportunities for some sort of credit basin created that would help alleviate or be able to get some buy-in? It's about finding space. I mean, really, there's just not a lot of available land that's in the watersheds that we would be able to purchase and convert. I hear what you're saying. It really is about comp plan requires water quality improvement, level of service, meeting level of service. And that's what this manual has historically done is tag off to that. So I think it's a bigger conversation, even maybe with the commission, about whether or not we're going to change comp plan, because that's what would have to happen in order for us to not require stormwater for redevelopment.
Thanks, Gail.
Sure.
Yeah, I think stormwater is going to be a challenge to some of these redevelopment projects, and so I hope that, I agree with doing water quality treatment. It's just a matter of how we handle it and thinking about it for some of these projects. In some of these areas, like the Power District, we're going to have to think creatively, and there may be opportunities for the city to think about opportunities for credits, particularly, on city-owned property like the Power District that they want to see redeveloped. So that's my 2 cents. There's a couple of other lights. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know anything about stormwater. I joke with my students that it flows downhill, and that's all you need to know. I agree with everything that you've said and everything that Mr. Singleton and Ms. Mowry said. It seems to me that the credit basins are like the link that makes it possible to do redevelopment without stormwater on site. Did I understand in something Ms. Mowry said that you can't buy even if credit basin capacity exists, you can't buy new capacity out of a basin, only replaced impervious?
No, you can buy water quality credit for a new project or redevelopment project.
For all of the capacity.
Yeah.
Okay. Quality only. We don't have any.
Quality only. Yeah. Sorry, Brian. It's a quality only.
It's only water quality now.
So yes, you're correct. There is no quantity purchase available.
Can you
quality.
Explain this?
So if you're increasing impervious, there are no credits you can buy.
And is that by virtue of this document or some other document?
That's by virtue of how the basins were developed and permitted. It's outside of these documents.
You can't increase your amount of runoff because they aren't designed to take the additional quantity of water. They're just designed to do the treatment for whatever amount they were designed for. Does that make sense?
Somewhat. It flows downhill. If you have any excellent ideas, I would support putting them in motion, Madam Chair. That's all I got.
You'd have to find some new space.
You'd have to find new area.
Yeah. Like Pleasant Street.
Mr. Newman.
I was actually just going to ask a question to you or someone else, just like what are the options? What are the suggestions? So basically, essentially, trying to create more banks.
I think that's a great option. As Gail and Brian, would agree, there aren't a lot of places, because it's got to be within the same watershed. It's got to be downhill from where, the redevelopment sites are, so that, your water's ultimately ending up there. So it's just something to think about. I mean, you know, the idea of how much the city is going to invest in infrastructure overall, street design, everything else, is an ongoing conversation. You know, we talk about it with urban standards and, you know, utilities and trees and how do we get all this to balance. Like, a lot of communities have invested, you know, millions of dollars in street redevelopment projects so that they can create the public realm that they want and put the utilities where they need to be for that to happen. But it costs a lot of money and it's municipal investment. And so similarly, I think with the stormwater banks, you know, the city really does the upfront investment and then over time developments are buying credit to pay for it. But it does require some upfront investment. And perhaps, you know, if you know, Washington can get things together, maybe there's some infrastructure money, and I don't know if any of it's stormwater. But, you know, I think it's something that hopefully the city is thinking about, and hopefully, you know, as this, you know, moves forward, and, you know, obviously the comp plan's all under review too. I don't imagine that, you know, the water quality aspect is going to go away in the comp plan rewrite, but it's just an issue with urban development, and that's sort of been a priority and a focus area for this board. And so I think we need to sort of view, you know, thinking about successful redevelopment and affordable housing, you know, we need to look at all of these documents through that lens.
And yeah, I agree with Stephanie. It really will take a large investment to establish some more basins throughout the community. It is something that we have talked about internally and to the Public Works Department about, you know, siting, permitting, both quantity and quality basins. But really at this time, as a department, we're funded at a level to maintain what we have and not necessarily upgrade or improve the existing developed areas. The majority of Gainesville does not have a modern stormwater treatment system, and is, you know, really functions under capacity of what it should be at. You notice when you drive around town and some of the more developed areas, when we get these really heavy rains, how the streets back up, or there's a lot of water that sits in the roadways. It's just simply because we don't have a modern system, and the investment to get to where we want to be would be pretty substantial.
Mr. Newman?
Yeah, just I think this is seems like a really important sort of issue, and I also, you know, we all tend to we're all just sort of thinking about like right now, and again, for the organization I work, we're constantly thinking about climate change, resiliency, more extreme events. So whatever, you know, like this is something that needs to sort of get addressed. It needs to be invested in because, you know, based on my understanding what's going to happen, we're going to have these more extreme water events a lot more often. And so like this, beyond just trying to sort of think about status quo, you know, if this is a problem going forward. So and I appreciate you bringing this up. I didn't pick up on that.
All right, so with that, any other comments or questions from the board? Is anyone ready? Oh, I guess we need to go. Mr. Diedenbach, are you here to make public comment on this item? We'll open it up to public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to better understand, personally, I'm mostly interested in the street network question. And I think if this is the document that somebody like Jay Brown or Mr. Diedenbach's colleagues who are civil engineers use to draw plats, it needs to cover that street network question. And I'm interested in learning more on stormwater as well. Again, it flows downhill is the extent of my knowledge. I've conveyed everything I know. I think this is a significant enough document, and we update it infrequently enough that it would be good to understand these and know if we need to make changes to it before we make a recommendation to the commission. So I don't know exactly what I want to do. I'm interested in hearing from other members of the plan board, but maybe we can get a more detailed presentation on those issues that incorporates, a planning perspective, especially from Department of Mobility, and maybe a little bit more of the incorporation from engineering staff and public works. And if we want to make changes to the document before we recommend it to the commission, we can. What are y'all thinking? Basically, what I'm saying is I'm not ready to vote. I'm not ready to pass this along yet. I think we need to work on it some more.
So I think what I'm hearing is maybe you want a more detailed presentation of what's within it, and the opportunity to give more specific feedback on each section. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Specifically, I think what it needs is some standards on street
Yes,
network.
yes.
But that view is relatively narrow because I feel like there's things that, like the stormwater discussion, that we haven't heard a more in-depth discussion of. So there other things might come up if we had that.
Okay. So I participated in some of the meetings, sort of with my work hat on, and I think that there were some documents that showed some of the proposed changes, and also meetings that sort of went through the highlights of each chapter. Is that something, Gail and Brian, that you feel like you could put some additional documentation together? And I don't know if there's a summary presentation. I can honestly imagine the city commission wanting some of that backup information as well, but not the full marked up version, like what we got here, not the full marked up version, but almost like a cliff notes to it. Do you all feel like that's something that you can put together easily? I think that is a good exercise for the commission to be more familiar with this document as well.
I think, Stephanie, so I can just give you an idea. I do actually have a longer presentation of this. The one I gave to the ASCE Gainesville chapter was probably 35 or 40 slides, but they're all engineers. They all want to get into the detail. So I already have that presentation that I'd be happy to, share another time if that's what you want to do. The markups of the EDCM as we went along is pretty significant. Mm-hmm. I mean, borderline you can't really read it. I'm just saying we did a lot of
much.
Yeah, we did a lot of editing and cutting, moving, combining a couple different chapters. That's one of the reasons why we presented it the way we did, was because you just can't read through the marked up version and have it make any sense. But we could do, a side by side if that's what you wanted to do.
I don't think we necessarily need to go through the red lines, but I think we can develop a presentation that goes through what all is included in the manual and how it aligns with the code and the comp plan.
That would be great. Yep, I think that's exactly. I see thumbs up over here. I think that would be really helpful, and I think that it would be really helpful for the commission as well to sort of understand how all these bits and pieces fit together. Because the average person that lives in Gainesville probably doesn't even realize that we have a code and a comp plan, let alone an EDCM. And so, and then you've got GRU standards, and then you've got, all of these documents sort of interplay together. But I think it's helpful to know what is supposed to belong where, which I think is some of Mr. Hawkins' question, is, and making sure that it's covered and that it's also consistent between them. So I think, sort of what you just mentioned, Brian, would be great. And Gail, you probably have, it sounds like, the foundation for what's where within this document, which is a good starting place. So I think that would be really helpful. I don't know if it's something that would be, I don't know how much is on our next workshop agenda, if it's more of a workshop item than a regular meeting item perhaps, and we can leave that to staff to determine. That's my thought. But
if it's done, if we do it at a workshop, then we have to bring it back a third time.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
But I don't mind. I don't know how urgent staff feels this is. Is this we should do it in the next couple months, or we should do it in the next 12 months?
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess, so we have a your next regular meeting is December 16th, and so that may be enough time. And I was going to say from I think some of the discussion tonight about the question of sort of what does the code say about street networks and some of those things. We had a couple of we had some discussion about year pre-COVID, let's say, with mobility and a little bit of with public works staff about this interconnectivity issue, and I can dredge some of that up, and probably Brian and Melissa from mobility and I could probably sit down and come up with something to incorporate into the presentation, the presentation that we're talking about. But I don't know, Brian, Gail, are you guys like on a time crunch to get it to the commission?
We're not on any particular time crunch to get it to the commission. I will tell you, we will not be ready in December to go into more detail.
Okay, we can schedule it for January, for your January meeting if you think that's enough time.
Yeah, I'll need to talk with staff and see what all we have, what all other priorities we have before we make any type of time commitment. I don't want to overcommit us.
Sounds good.
Okay. Your light is up next, but I don't know if I just missed you. Okay. Then Mr. Ackerman, did you have something?
This is an aside to staff. I think a point has become apparent is that we have a whole group of regulatory manuals that interlock with the land use code and possibly the LDRs. At some point, I mean, I've been on the board a long time. I've never heard of the EVCM before. So obviously, this is a document that has a lot to do with implementing the things that we decide. And if it's not there, and so I think what I would like to see is at some point, not as an emergency, but I would like to see a list of all of the documents that implement or affect the implementation of the LDRs and the land use code, so that we're familiar with whether or not we're just talking into air and there's no place to implement. So, I mean, I know GRU has one. We've seen bits and pieces of that. I was on a commission maybe 10 years ago about that stuff. But I know there's probably other things, and it would be nice to know what those are.
Yeah, that's a good point. And GRU, for the record, they don't have just one.
Yes.
They have several.
They have
Water,
separate,
wastewater,
they have separate
electric.
books, I know.
Every utility has their own rules.
Right.
We have the book
Yeah, we
show the commission.
bring some of that back too at the same time.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Calderon.
I helped work on the document, and the Land Development Code is replete with references to the design manual. And I just love the way that it works, because the document does not tell us that the parking space needs to be 9 feet wide, but it gives us, information on how to probably measure it. It does not tell us about the type of bicycle racks that we need, but it discusses that. It does not tell us where sidewalk goes, but it tells us that if you put sidewalks, this is how it's supposed to be. I think a lot of the stuff that was mentioned in the realm of the Land Development Code, the comprehensive plan of working out those issues, growth management issues, and of course, how we deal with the form-based code. The subdivision ordinance, I was toying a lot with some of the ideas that I've heard to bring them up in the design manual. But when I looked further at it, I found out that I realized that those criteria that are in the subdivision, like block sizes, the width of streets, connectivity, are not dictated by the design manual. But the design manual, once we come up with the idea, would help us figure out the best type of sidewalk, the best route, the best way to put lighting. These are the factors I think that and so I never really brought it up and pushed it to say because I thought the document served its purpose. I think it is true that there are some things missing in terms of how we do things and why we do things, but I do not think that the fault is in the design manual that we have now, because it takes a lot of coordination with other departments. Like, for example, the placement of trees. We would need to talk with the city arborist, the urban forester, the transportation people, and we come up with those goals, objectives, and policies. And then once we say, well, we need a connectivity in this area, then the design manual is going to say this is the best way to do it. I thought Brian mentioned that and Andrew mentioned that, but I just thought that I see we're leading into a point where we're going to have a lot of, specification and details that is going to be really difficult to bring out so that you can see it. And Mr. Ackerman mentioned it, that the engineering design manual is not something that a lot of people know about, but we as planners and engineers, they reference them a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Calderon. So bringing it back to the board, Mr. Hawkins made a motion. I don't think we got a second. I don't know if it was a fully formed motion. Oh, okay. Maybe it wasn't a fully formed motion. We have to decide what we're doing next.
I move we continue item 210572 to date staff identifies available for further presentation.
Second from Sophia. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we will see you all again, it sounds like, in a few months with a little bit more information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Castillo, can you read the next item into the record, please?
Item number 210465, petition PB-21-00133 LUC. City of Gainesville is the applicant, requests to amend the City of Gainesville future land use map for 6 properties from Alachua County, medium density residential, light industrial, and heavy industrial to City of Gainesville office and industrial, located south of Southwest Archer Road, west of Interstate 75, north of current city limits, and east of Southwest 44th Street.
Thank you. And who's presenting this one?
Hi, good evening, City Plan Board. Nathaniel Chan with the City of Gainesville. I'll be presenting on this item.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chan.
Thanks. All right, presentation is up. Can you all see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. Well, again, good evening, City Plan Board. My name is Nathaniel Chan. I'm a planner with the City of Gainesville Department of Sustainable Development. This is petition PB-21-133 LUC, a future land use amendment of the subject area located on the southwest corner of Southwest Archer Road and I-75. The proposed area for land use change is associated with an ongoing annexation of this area into the City of Gainesville and is approximately 60 acres. A majority of the subject area is vacant. There are existing self-storage and vehicular uses on the southeastern properties. I can highlight them here. So over here in these lower 3 properties, the existing land use categories are shown on the map. So the top 3 are Alachua County medium residential and Alachua County heavy industrial and light industrial for the southern parcels. The surrounding future land use categories include a mix of City of Gainesville future land use to the south and east and Alachua County future land use to the north and west. Here are the existing uses surrounding the property and their respective future land use categories. So to orient you a little bit to the north, there's Hotel, that's the Country Inn and Suites. There's also Celebration Point right across the way, and multifamily residential. To the south, there's retail that is, here's Fredbear Drive, and this is their archery that has future land use industrial, that's City of Gainesville. And to the east is I-85, and then there's across from I-75, there's hotels, and the west is existing single family and multifamily residential. That is Alachua County medium density residential. The proposed future land use categories are shown on the map. Office future land use proposed on the upper three parcels, and industrial or IND future land use is proposed on the lower three parcels and part of this middle parcel as well. So office in blue and industrial in purple. The proposed office future land use is intended to allow the future construction of a medical hospital with associated medical uses, including a rehabilitation center and behavioral health facility. The office future land use category is the implementing category that will allow MD zoning, which is the proposed zoning. The proposed industrial future land use on the southern properties is compatible with the existing uses on the site. As I said, there were existing self-storage facilities and office and other vehicular uses on the industrial future land use. And this additional area for industrial future land use is also intended to allow for a future self-storage facility associated with the medical use. The proposal meets all of the review criteria for land use change outlined in section 30-3.13 of the Land Development Code, and more details on the petition meeting the review criteria can be found in the staff report. With that being said, staff recommends approval of petition PB-21-00133 LUC. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Are there any questions from the board for staff? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Diedenbach, do you have a presentation or you're just hanging out? Okay. There aren't any other members of the public here to comment, so that brings it back to the board for a discussion or a motion. Mr. Newman.
I'll make a motion to approve. Page here.
It's on page 3.
Yep. There it is. Yeah, to approve PB-21-001667.
Okay.
No, that's the wrong one. I lied.
Nope.
That's
Oh, the one under that. Yeah,
sorry,
you're right.
Page 4.
Well, it's the land use.
Yes.
Page 3.
Page 3. Got this one?
210465.
Yeah, I move to approve 210465. There we go, sorry.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, carries unanimously. Mr. Castillo, can you read the rezoning application into the record, please?
I move we just approve everything.
Item 210466, petition PB-21-00132 zoning. City of Gainesville is the applicant, requesting to rezone 6 properties from Alachua County Single Family Residential, R1A, A, R1B, Manufacturing Mobile Home Park, RM, Multifamily Residential, R2, Agricultural, A, and Manufacturing Services, MS, to City of Gainesville Medical Services, MD, and Business Industrial, BI, located south of Southwest Archer Road, west of Interstate 75, north of current city limits, and east of Southwest 44th Street.
Okay, and Mr. Chan, I assume you're with us for this item as well?
Yes, it would be strange if I wasn't.
Yes, I agree. Do you have a presentation to share?
I do. I'll give an abbreviated one.
Great, thank
So again, good evening, City Plan Board. My name is Nathaniel Chan. I'm a planner for the City of Gainesville Department of Sustainable Development. This is petition PB-21-132 ZON, a proposed rezoning of the subject area located on the southwest corner of Southwest Archer Road and I-75. So let's see here. All right. Again, this proposed area for rezoning is associated with an ongoing annexation of this area into the city of Gainesville and is approximately 60 acres. The current zoning is Alachua, a slew of Alachua County residential zoning occupies the majority of the site, and Alachua County manufacturing services and agricultural zoning are on the southern 3 parcels. The surrounding zoning districts include City of Gainesville to the south and east, and Alachua County zoning to the north and west. So the surrounding zoning districts are here on the map and within the table. I won't orient you again, but it's on the southwest corner of Southwest Archer Road and I-75. Right, so the proposed zoning districts are shown on the map. So medical services or MD zoning is proposed on the upper 3 parcels, and business industrial or BI zoning is on the lower 3 parcels and part of this middle parcel. The proposed MD zoning is intended to allow the future construction again of a medical hospital and associated medical uses, including a rehabilitation center and behavioral health facility. The MD zoning district is the only zoning district that would allow a medical hospital use by right unless it were a PD. The proposed BI zoning is compatible with the existing uses on the site and with the surrounding uses. The existing self-storage facilities, vehicular uses, and office spaces would be allowed under the proposed business industrial zoning. And again, this square of business industrial zoning is intended to allow for a future storage facility. The proposal meets the review criteria for rezoning outlined in section 30-3.14 of the Land Development Code. With that being said, staff recommends approval of petition PB-21-00132 ZON. And if you're looking for more details on the petition meeting the review criteria, it can be found in the staff report. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Any questions on this one? Mr. Ackerman?
I have one question I meant to ask at the land use stage. You refer to the annexation as being approximately 60 acres, and I noticed the CHW report talks about a 49 plus acre. I'm sorry, too many fingers, but it did say 49 plus. I'm assuming the developed part is not part of your impending project.
I believe the CHW report actually, for some reason, let me see if I can pull it up for you. The rezoning justification report. The highlighted area does not include you're correct, the existing self-storage, those southern 3 parcels that we're proposing for business industrial zoning.
I assumed that was, but I just wanted to make sure we were not annexing different amounts of land. Thank you.
No, we are annexing that piece of property. I believe it might have just been a small error in just the report. So the annex area is 60 acres.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Any other questions for staff on this one?
I've
Mr.
stirred up
Diedenbach.
Mr. Diedenbach.
Welcome.
Good evening, y'all. I think the mistake of the day was that the planning staff did not have to leave their Halloween costumes on for the event today.
I did see Mr. Chan's Halloween costume, and I was very impressed.
Yeah.
Kudos to you, Mr. Chan.
Good catch, Madam Chair, by Planning Board Member Ackerman. There are parcels that were not in the HCA acquisition for that area that were existing businesses, specifically the I-75 storage area, as well as Brooker Pest Control. And there's a couple parcel areas in there that actually belong to the city of Gainesville where there are power line transmissions and utility lines in there. That's part of the reason for the differentiation in the land use area. But everything that's being annexed in will have city of Gainesville land use and zoning on it. So thank you for your support on the earlier item on behalf of North Florida Regional Medical Center and HCA.
Thank you. Okay, not seeing any other members of the public here to comment, we will bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion. Mr. Newman.
I'll make a motion to approve petition PB-21-00122ZON.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, I think
Whoever, I don't
Sophia
care.
beat you to it, Mr.
That's fine.
Ackerman. She has. Okay, all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. The next two items were, no, wait, is there one more? There's another future land use. Okay, Mr. Castillo, can you read the next? Yeah, the next two were continued, but we do have an information item, so we do have one more. Yep, can you read that into the record, or are we just handing it over to Mr. Bredfeld?
You guys made Madam Chair, you made a motion on those two at agenda adoption to continue, right?
Yeah, it was part of the agenda adoption to, I believe.
The comp plan item, gotcha.
Yeah, but
Yeah, we still
those
have that.
two items, I think you included a date certain of December 16th with the agenda adoption. Yes. Okay, so we'll move on to the comprehensive plan update draft, how we work chapter next.
Item number 210583, the comprehensive plan update draft, how we work chapter. The purpose of this item is to discuss the draft, how we work chapter of the city's comprehensive plan, Imagine GNV. This chapter, as well as others, have been posted here for public review and online comments. And the City Commission will discuss the entire draft plan at a workshop on November 17th.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Mr. Bredfeld. It's been a while since we've seen you at a plan board meeting.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Good to see everybody. Good to be seen.
Yes.
Thanks for taking some time to have a look at this chapter, and this is basically a chapter that I've been working on a little bit, so it's really, it's a draft at this point, and to the extent that folks want to give us some comments, they're very much appreciated, so. Before I get into the draft, though, I wanted to say I want to make a few preceding remarks, just as a point of context. One is that, for me, this, and it's really, I've got a cite in the chapter, because this, I think this all goes back to the document that the community looked at back in January 2018, which is this Beaver report on disparities in the community. And if you haven't read through this, the site is in my chapter, but I think it's a worthwhile read because some of the disparities that I think we're trying to address in various parts of the comp plan update, but particularly in this chapter, are really highlighted to the extent that in the general conclusions, basically, one of the general conclusions of this study was that both the experts and the minorities widely recognize that providing a high-quality educational experience for them will have a significant impact. And then secondly, finding employment is seen as a challenging task by minority residents, but more jobs are needed that pay a living wage. More employers are needed who are willing to hire minorities, even those with a criminal record. So it's sort of like the starting point for me. The second contextual thing, which I know that the staff has already presented to you, which is the resolution that the City Commission adopted. When did they adopt this? They adopted it in November of 2019, and this went specifically to their expectations about the comp plan update. To wit, they said, this is a resolution of the City of Gainesville confirming that race and equity is a core value that will be incorporated into the updated version of the comprehensive plan. And suggested how that would be done in the resolution. So it's another reason why we're taking this approach, I think, in the update. The other two things, big things that shape the draft are, one is, I feel like, is the existing practice that we're currently doing in economic development, because from my perspective, if we don't model some of the things that we're proposing in the comp plan doing on what we're already doing to a certain extent already, but maybe more intentionally, then I fear that we're not going to be able to get them done. So I think we have to be realistic about, like in my case, I have an office of 3 people, and we're responsible for economic development and real estate citywide. And so it's a lot. And so if we're going to do things, we've got to recognize that there's only so many resources that are going to be given to us to do these things, and they've got to be like in our sweet spot already. But they can be done more intentionally in line with the City Commission's resolution. Okay, so that's the other contextual thing. And then lastly, I think in this chapter, definitely amongst others, we have to think about sort of like the macro trends, right? Because we're not just talking about what the city is doing in the economic development space, because we're dealing with markets. We're dealing with just coming out of a public health crisis and what that's done to expectations about work and the workplace. Those of you who read the Wall Street Journal have seen a lot of articles recently about the Great Resignation, which is, many people reconsidering what they want to do with their lives based on what they've gone through the last year and a half, and that's created a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities as well. We're always, local government and the local economy is always operating within the midst of the macro trends at the macroeconomic level, and there's a lot of things going on right now at the macroeconomic level, whether it's inflation or other issues that are challenging. And then, of course, it's demographics is destiny in a certain respect. So the 2020 census data is just being released now, and we can update some of the data that came out of that 2018 study with the new data, and we can see what's happening in our community with respect to population, which drives markets in certain areas of the city versus others. Okay, and that can tell us certain things as well. So with that, those were sort of like the universe of things that we were thinking about when we wrote this chapter. As far as the chapter itself goes, I'm going to walk through it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to point out a couple of things, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I marked here on the first page 1, that I put that emphasis on the 2018 Bieber study. The citation is there, and also that forming a context. In one of the paragraphs, we talk about the fact that I do want to make this distinction between maybe intentional policies or things that were done by certain levels of government or in the law years ago, and then also maybe the fact that we just have a lack of private investment in certain areas. We actually have disinvestment, and that can be driven by a variety of things, and it can be driven by some of the demographics as well. Okay, so we've been fighting that battle a little bit on the east side of town, for instance, over a period of years. And there's I think it's new for the city, a new emphasis in the city space on really dealing with issues of job training. Because the other thing that you see currently out in the media is this idea of not only the Great Resignation, but this idea of mismatch. And mismatch is the mismatch between all the jobs that are out there. I think it's 10 million now, but the fact that we don't have people that are trained for those jobs. So there's like a mismatch between the job opportunities and the skill set that people have. The city commission, in the last year or so, they've wanted to get more into the job training space. That's not typically something the city's really gotten involved in that much, but the city is starting to think through how to do that and has actually taken some actions to try to do that. In the first page, I also wanted to emphasize in terms of the history of so this is not a required element in the comp plan. And frankly, we didn't address this real intentionally in the prior comp plan, which I was sitting up there as a director when we did the update. We talked about economic development, but we talked about it in, I would say, fairly abstract terms. And we talked about it particularly in the land use element. And we talked about it in terms of terms like, we're favorable to redevelopment, or we're in support of the innovation zone and the innovation economy. But we didn't really totally drill down into what that kind of meant. So I think this is an attempt to try to do that a little bit more. Okay, so that's it. I think on the second page, we talk about the progress to build on, because it's not to say that we haven't, the city has done a lot of, I mean, since I've been here, I'm going into my 20th year with the city has always been supportive of economic development. I mean, to the degree it can be, and within the space that local government occupies. It's always been willing to try to get involved, to try to incent certain types of business development. It's made many capital investments on the east side of town. It's sold land in the airport industrial park. It's to companies that are growing, existing companies or new companies. It's approved millions and millions and millions of dollars of grants that go to the airport from the federal government, but the city has to approve those dollars because the title of the land is to the city. So we have to also be in that front. So there's been a lot of things that have happened on the east side, particularly that are positive. And a lot of investments and a lot of economic development work that's been done. And we have a lot of partners. We have a lot of partners in the community that do economic development. The county does some economic development. The chamber does some. Santa Fe College does some, particularly in the job training space. The University of Florida does some as well. So and of course, private industry. So we have a lot of groups that are interested in this, and we, like many hands makes for light work, and we need those many hands to be involved in these things. But what's at stake is the main thrust, and what's at stake is the priority for the city is to ensure that benefits of growth are shared by all, and that no neighbor is really left behind. It's a comprehensive plan, so it's aspirational, but that's our intent. We're going to try to be more intentional about this. And then the way the chapter is laid out, it's really laid out with basically focused on three outcomes. And I would say the outcomes are, the first outcome number one, is really directed more at, I would say, individual development and the aspects of getting somebody a job and focusing on like job development and the individual. I would say outcomes 2 and 3 are more focused on business development. So either development that we do to grow, attract, or start up businesses, or particular assistance or nurturing to small business. In outcome 1, a couple of things that I'll call out there in terms of the actual strategies. I mean, I think the city has to be a leader in this space, so like the city is an employer as well. And so if we're expecting things from private industry, then we have to ensure that the city is modeling an approach to equitable hiring and labor practices as well, okay? So we have to, the city commission has to really lead on this, which it has tried to do. And then we have to work with the partners in the community to ensure that neighbors have access to adequate job training and career development. Because We as a city, within the city organization, we don't do job training. We don't have staff that does job training per se, but we can partner with the university or with Santa Fe College when they do entrepreneur training, which we've done. There's been a program, and we can provide in-kind services to that kind of training. Program like the GEAP program, which is Gainesville Entrepreneurship for Adverse Populations. That's led out of Jamie Kraft's group in the Warrington School, where they're working with folks, adverse populations on entrepreneurial training, and we provide space for them and also bring to the table some of the things they need to know if they're going to transact business with the city. And so those are the two there. On the outcome number 2, we're talking here about one thing that's important for any business to grow, and that's that the city is providing the adequate infrastructure. So we need to make sure that the infrastructure is in place for if we're going to expect economic development or business development to occur. The city did a great job 20 years ago. I can't take any credit for it, or 25 years ago before I was here, in building that airport industrial park. You know, that was something where they designated land. They got Senator Graham at the time in a deal with Paula Delaney, who was the mayor and the head of the airport, and they made it possible for the property to be sold fee simple. And the city put in all the infrastructure. It got a grant for the state to put in the roads, and it did a regional stormwater solution. So that's the kind of thing the city can contribute. And really, actually, we're going to probably be bringing to the commission a couple more contracts in the next 6 months, and then we're going to be out of land in the airport industrial park. So the city needs to probably think about if they still want to be in this business moving forward. And then this idea of incentives, the city commission has already designated that as something they want to think about for the citywide. I mean, of course, the CRA, the GCRA has incentives, an incentive package that they're working on some of them, but they have a few incentives that they've already developed that they offer within the confines of their geography. So the question is, does the city want to get a little bit more aggressive with that type of thing or not? Or if we are going to do that, how do we want to set those up? You know, do we want to replicate what the GCRA has and just make it apply in a larger geographic area and then just use a different bucket of money? Maybe that might be a good way of using it. The last outcome and a couple of the strategies there that I wanted to highlight were, this is really directed at small and minority business owners and entrepreneurs. One is that we need as a city to ensure that our procurement process is pretty transparent, because of course the city does a lot of procurement and purchasing of services in the community, and sometimes it's been a little Byzantine in the past of how you sort of transact that type of business with the city, so we have to work on that. We were thinking at the time, before the legislature got through with its business, about looking at this whole idea of home occupation permits, because the city over time has supported folks getting home occupation permits to start, you know, small businesses in their house. It's a great thing. As I said, the macro trend about this hybrid work environment, there are more and more people that want to do that kind of thing. There's low startup costs, obviously. We had a process in the city to basically handle that through code enforcement, basically to get a home occupation permit, because the idea there is we want businesses to be in homes where it works out, but we also want to be hospitable to the neighborhood character. So, like, we want businesses to go in, but we don't want them to create a lot of nuisances. So there was a regulatory framework for that to occur. I was reviewing where we were with the code enforcement staff today, and it seemed like the state actually preempted home occupational licenses, and put in criteria that you really kind of have to follow, but that's something that we're gonna have to kind of think through how we get out of that game and if anything's retained moving forward. But something we probably want to get more word out to people is how that's basically done, because we get a lot of calls for people who want to actually pursue that. The last thing I wanted to mention under the small minority businesses is trying to identify and address obstacles sometimes that are incurred in the access to capital space. And we actually had a program that we had started, and this could come under the idea of incentives as well, but we actually had what we called an opportunity loan, which was a startup micro grant, and we actually set up a relationship with a local lender in town. It was Florida Community Bank and Trust. City took about $80,000, deposited it with the bank, earned a CD rate on it. And then the idea was that would be used as a loan, sort of like a loan guarantee. So they could make loans up to $10,000 to small businesses where they couldn't get a first conventional financing, and the city could act as a sort of a guarantee or a loan loss reserve if the business couldn't, pay the loan, basically. We did a lot of work to get that up and running. We went through an RFP process. It was in place. It looked like it was going to be pretty positively received. That bank got bought out by a credit union, Mid-Florida credit union. Credit unions can't hold public deposits. So we had to stop the program at that point. They refunded our money. So, but it was a good potential future use of trying, or a future example of trying to deal with that access to capital in the small world that we live in local government. So it's another tool that maybe the city wants to look at moving forward. So with that, I will stop. But those are the outcomes that we're kind of thinking about right now. Some of the strategies to try to achieve those outcomes. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, or any contributions you want to make to the chapter.
So I have one, and it's going to echo, it relates more to outcome 3. It's going to echo some of the comments that I made on the city government, how we work chapter that we saw at the last workshop we had. I think it's really important that we not only emphasize small minority businesses, but that we're specific about incentives for local businesses. It's easy to find a minority business that's based in California or Canada. And I understand the need to support minority businesses, but I think we get more impact for our local community if we support a local small business. And it doesn't even necessarily, I'm not worried about necessarily the confines of the city limits. I mean, I think, a lot of people don't even know where the city limits are and Alachua County begins. But I think some element of local is important to keep in mind. And just, even in writing, the policies, I assume, that a company would have to be somewhat local to participate in the capital programs. You aren't going to give money to a business based in another state, but I think just keeping that local aspect and even including the word local in some of these indicators and strategies is really important. I participated in one of the workshops that the purchasing department had when they were launching the study that they're doing now, and I can tell you that a lot of the other people that were tuning in to see what the city of Gainesville was going to do were out-of-town people. And that's great. It's great to support minority and women-owned businesses everywhere, but more importantly, if we want to reach these economic indicators and provide jobs for people, it's got to be local businesses or people that are at least going to open an office here. So I think that lens is really important. It's all important, but the local piece just can't be left out. So, and I said the same thing when we were talking about city purchasing contracts and the other elements. So I hope we start to see local threaded throughout here a little bit more. I think it's assumed, but it's not written. Right.
Yeah, and I'll tell you just so on just a practical thing. The last commission meeting, the 21st, we basically had 3 I had 3 items on there that were all local, basically, because we had a local retail store that we did a lease with in the old whiskey house in the parking garage, and that was an economic development deal because we definitely did not get market rent on that deal, but it was a local business, and we want more things, and the commission wants more things in the downtown than just bars. So that was one. The other one was the never-ending saga of Lot 10, which was the city commission went with a local developer on that, AMJ. And then the third one was the Phalanx deal in the Armory, which was the ability of Phalanx to do some subleasing in that building because their business model has struggled a little bit, and so they have an opportunity to maybe get some other companies into that building. It's a great space. It's on the east side of town. So, but I hear what you have to say. Those are good points, and I appreciate it.
We have a couple more lights, Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Brickfield. One thing that that's actually, I think it's in the, is it in the introduction or somewhere in the intro of the whole comp plan? There's a little section that talks about when people are marginalized, the entire economy suffers. And it's like, it basically refers to some studies basically sort of talking about how everyone would do better, everything would be better if there was more investment, if we, essentially brought everybody up. And when I read that the first time, I didn't pick up on one of the things that I would be interested in, I think would be valuable for this, is if there was some way that you could sort of extrapolate from some of those studies or do something like this for our community. So you could say, look, this is why we're doing this. Because I have some concerns that, when this comes out and when, there might be some people who don't quite understand it and who are gonna be like, what, you're just giving everything away to this community, what about us? And again, we all understand that why maybe the us have gotten a lot more things over a long period of time. So one comment I have is I feel like that we need to have some analysis that could sort of bring it back to Gainesville. And so that kind of gets to, it could be also repeated or maybe something that's in this section about what the studies or the theory of what it would sort of do for our economy if we could sort of make these things happen. So that's just one suggestion. The other things that kind of popped in my head, and again, I'm sure it's sort of inherent. I mean, and you kind of talked about this a little bit, but one of my concerns is that the nature of work is just changing, and it's hard to sort of predict what's going to happen. And so, obviously, the focus needs to be about sort of equity, but that I think also needs to be, at least sort of the forefront in terms of strategies, making sure that we are, we're not looking at now, we're looking at the future of what work is going to be like. And then my last comment, and again, I really like to see the discussion about trying to get access to capital, and I think all those things are good. And one of the things that I've done some recent reading, and another sort of issue, and again, I don't know how we could sort of do this, but on the east side of town, there's no banks. So I know when I had my business, one of the things that I was advised to me is like, you got to get to know the bankers. You have to develop relationships with bankers. And so the fact that there are no banks on the east side of town is a problem. I'm not sure what the city can do about it. Maybe, again, I don't know, maybe incentivize banks to sort of go over there or something like this. But, I think that is a problem. And then on the other hand, banking is changing to some degree. But I do, just as a comment, I think that might be something else that we might be able to try to, figure out to address. So, yeah, so thank you.
Appreciate all those comments. Thank you.
phrase them down to something, and a lot of them have already been echoed here on the board. Can you hear me? I think in being in that world too, from a sales and leasing standpoint in commercial real estate, I think that there is a very ugly stigma about the east side and what it has. I don't necessarily see that, especially being somebody that's not necessarily from Gainesville. From the outside looking in, I see a lot of beauty on the east side. There's a lot of things to appreciate about the east side. And I think a lot of people that come from outside of Gainesville don't know the stigma, and that resonates with them. That message resonates with them. So if there's a way to create some kind of marketing collateral about what the opportunity is in East Gainesville and what some of these statistics that you guys put together, because I think the city has done a fantastic job of recognizing the issues, addressing those issues, but it's kind of like if the tree falls in the woods and there's nobody there to hear it. It doesn't make a sound. I sat on a call just last week with an individual that's looking at, that didn't know anything about what's going on in Gainesville, looking at an opportunity in Gainesville, and the light just went on for him. I think there's a lot of people out there like that. If we're proactive in our outreach towards those individuals with such marketing collateral, that they'll see the same things. I see that taking place in Ocala right now, where there's a lot of outside capital that's being infused into the market, and they're also making a concerted effort to use that money to leverage local opportunities for people to create jobs, which creates homes, which creates all the great things that we want to see on the east side of Gainesville. So I think that if we can somehow come together and put together that marketing collateral and go make a proactive outreach to those individuals who do see Gainesville, who are not inundated with the negative stigma around East Gainesville, it would bring some very positive impact.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments, thoughts on this chapter? I don't see any other lights. Mr. Ackerman?
I have a brief comment. You know, the so-called Great Resignation, to me, it represents maybe the end of an era of business enterprises that made their business model based on driving the cost of human capital to the barest that people could even survive on. And I think the results of that, of course, are great inequality and a desperation of that there's just no way I'm ever going to have a life working for a number of these things. And so for me, the Great Resignation is actually a sign of optimism that people in the United States have decided they're not going to live with that anymore. And more importantly, I think it demonstrates that we need to harness that optimism and reward it with people being able to have jobs and livings that actually pay enough to have the American dream, or what used to be the American dream. And I think that's what we should really be aiming at. I don't think we should be the predatory Rick Stott who travels America to brag about how low our wages are and how starved our employees are to do whatever you want. I think we are in that stage where we want people to make a living wage, and I think everybody does better when everybody does better. I don't think that there's a benefit to having a large part of our population living paycheck to paycheck. I think people should have greater ability to enjoy their life, and I suspect you'll end up having greater productivity in that situation. So I'm hoping that to some extent we harness some of that optimism, I'm not completely on board with our new comp plan. It's a huge change in tone. I understand the tone. I just don't want it to be empty promises.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. And I think, we've got, I think as I said in one of my prefacing comments, is that when I'm thinking about what I'm putting in the comp plan, I want it to be within the scope of some of the things that are realistic in my practice right now for the city, because I don't want to get too far out there because, I mean, comp plans are aspirational many times, but they've got to have some, reasonable sense that you're going to actually be able to achieve something. I mean, so no disagreement there.
Great, well, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
evening.
Appreciate it very much.
I think that's our last regular item on the agenda. Any member comments on anything else? I know we need to talk about our meeting schedule. Ms. Corgato.
Question about the phone lines for public comment. Is that permanently no longer a thing?
Andrew?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. The city, basically, the city clerk's office gives don't, basically don't want to use the phone lines for advisory boards. So we've been doing it for the comp plan workshops, but not for the regular meetings.
Can I, actually as a follow-up, since you just mentioned that we are still using the phone line for the comp plan workshop, we haven't actually had anyone call in to those. How are we, is that being advertised? What kind of public input are we getting on the comp plan at this point?
We've actually gotten a lot of comments through Conveo, through where the chapters are actually posted. One of the things that the website we're using, or the service that we're using, allows for people to go and comment line by line, see live comments, and we're actually getting a lot of feedback. We're going to probably be bringing sort of a breakdown of the analysis of what we've gotten in terms of public feedback on the actual chapters to you at a future workshop. But we actually are getting a lot of, outside of our, these meetings, we are getting a lot of feedback, just not necessarily in a traditional public hearing format. And that's part of what, what's a little bit different about this effort, that it's not just our standard sort of come to the meeting, give your comments. Yeah.
I just worry, I think we're getting a lot of, individual input from individuals, but I worry that may not be accessible to everyone. And I also think there's a missed opportunity when everyone's doing it in isolation and you aren't bringing the community together to talk about something like a comp plan. I think, last night was one of the first public workshop engagement processes that the city had with this downtown master plan that's going on, and it was sort of unbelievable to be there because an event like that hadn't happened in a while. I think people were just hungry for it, and I couldn't help but think, are we going to get the best comp plan without something like this, where we're bringing people together? So I just, and it strikes me that we haven't even had anyone call in to the workshops. We haven't been getting, I think a lot of people still aren't comfortable going out. I know I have kids at home that aren't vaccinated yet. I'm still exercising a lot of precautions in my personal life. So I worry that even when we have the public hearings on the chapters, we aren't going to get the normal turnout even here that we would. We haven't been seeing as much turnout here. So I really have some concerns about the public engagement process. And I understand even if we're getting individual input, I think we need more than that for a comp plan. So I don't know what other people think, but I'm nervous. I'm nervous that when we get to the point of we're here's this comp plan, we're going to adopt it. And, people may have seen the website, but they don't, there's no public process. There's just a website. And then all of a sudden it's this new comp plan that's taking effect. And I think there's a potential for some pushback when that happens. So I don't know if that's something you all can think about and talk to the consultant about. And, I know that there's still limitations in what's possible, but I hope we can be creative.
Yeah, I guess I would maybe say that we have had a lot of engagement over not just at the plan board workshops, but we've had listening sessions, we've hired community members, we've done targeted media pushes through Cox. We've done a lot. I mean, given the limitations that we've had with COVID, I guess. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and the planner in me is used to oh, we're gonna have a giant public meeting or what have you, and that's somehow going to yield more valuable feedback than these other methods. I will say it's probably something that I can bring up with our new city manager, and talk about that if you guys really feel like we need to have a big public hoedown to get some feedback that we don't have today. But I will say I mean, having, as Mr. Redfeld indicated, having worked on a couple of different comp plans in my time with the city, I will say we've gotten a lot more robust public feedback with this process than we have with any of the other comp plans we've done before. And I think a more diverse set of feedback than what we've done before as well. So I guess, I mean, those are sort of, my thoughts for.
So we need to tell that story better then.
Yeah, and I will say.
Because that's not,
tell the
yes,
story.
we need to tell that story.
Sure.
We need to paint the picture of the public engagement,
Right.
because it's really missing right now. And if anyone happens to go back and watch the video of the workshops, they're gonna see that no one from the public participated. And I don't know if these other things have been recorded and if they're accessible. And I do think just website involvement alone is limiting.
Right.
Right.
I would agree with that. And that's
So
not
let's
just
be
one.
careful that we need to paint the picture
Sure.
at a minimum. And I do think, it's a significantly different comp plan than we've ever seen before. So it's not just, checking the state boxes that we've updated our comp plan every 10 years. This is radically different, and people are gonna be surprised by it. And I think we just need to be very sure that we've done a good job of public outreach. So, and I see some other lights, so, Mr. Hawkins?
I was not aware until you made your comment that we had started the downtown master planning process yet, or at least the public engagement portion. I'd actually reached out to the consultant to be added to whatever their list was, not including y'all, but mostly the principal consultant. Mr. Castillo, could you get us on that mailing list? That's something that I would love to know when those meetings happen.
Sure, we'll look into it.
Okay, Mr. Newman?
Yeah, I'm just.
Echoing what Mrs. Sutton said. Again, going to when I've worked on NEPA documents and things like this, I just hope that we can sort of document everything, the number of people, just all of that stuff, because I think there's going to be, I think there could be some significant blowback, and it could be people from outside the city too. So, and I just think we've just got to be ready, for it, and we have to sort of document. And again, did we talk to the chamber? Did we talk? I assume we have, but I'm just saying, all that stuff, boxes got to be checked, and also, I think just also be prepared that essentially that whoever those entities are, that they're gonna, if people reach out to them, they're gonna be yeah, we did look at it. Yeah, we did talk to them. You don't wanna, I don't think we wanna be in a position where, they're oh, no, we never really did, or, oh yeah, we just had one phone call. It's gotta be significant. Or it has to be, we just need to make sure that the engagement is not by the surface, so.
Yeah, and I can absolutely say it is not by the surface.
I know, right.
I think if it would be helpful, we could incorporate when we bring the final few chapters back, we can incorporate a presentation about the whole engagement process and talk about the different things that went into the process in terms of collecting feedback. And we were going to do that anyway when we get, and we've done that with the commission with different elements of the public participation process. But we can do that if I think some of the things I think I described, the plan board may not be aware of from what it sounds like, so we can definitely bring that forward.
So one question about the comp plan, and again, I haven't looked at the current one in a very, very long time, but I mean, again, would there ever be an appendix or basically showing all of the engagement would that ever be sort of a kind of like a formal part of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's our intent, is to have that incorporated as a part of the plan as well, to talk about that. Some plans have like a sort of, have like we did this, we talked to these people. So yeah.
I think we're to some extent missing a point here. I think it's important that we have true, robust engagement. I don't think it's that important to convince ourselves we've done that. We really got to convince the people who are going to live under this plan. And the only experience I've had of that kind of robust thing was for the form-based code. We had dozens and dozens of meetings, some here, some other venues. We went around the city and said, here's what's going to happen in your neighborhood. And it went on, and we had raucous crowds in here. But the one thing I remember at the end of that process, the day that we delivered that to the city commission, there was almost nobody here. Because we had spent a lot of time sanding it off and listening to people, and got it to the point where people were convinced that the plan that was going forward was one that they understood and that they could live with. And I think if we don't do that, I don't know how we do that exactly, but I do think the remote interactions, I think you lose the sense of community that says, I mean, it's not just some lonely vigilante in their living room, worrying about what's going to happen to their street. You'd like to know that your neighbors agree with this. Or that you're not the one crazy neighbor that wants something crazy and the rest of them don't. But I do think we ought to try, I don't know exactly, I don't know if when we get this thing for a somewhat finished thing, but we're still willing to take input, do it at Bo Diddley 3 times, and I know that's a radical concept, but at least it's an some outdoor large venue that encourages people to show up.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we make some effort to establish that there is community buy-in for whatever it is we're doing.
So the downtown workshop yesterday was at Bo Diddley.
Yep.
And it was remarkably successful. I mean, turnout exceeded all of my expectations.
Right. Well, I couldn't make it to that because I was too lazy to get off my couch.
You could have called in the call-in.
I know, I could have called in and commented, but I didn't even want to do that. And so anyway, I just do think that we ought to do something more than count how many people sent us an email.
Sure. I think that's good feedback. And I will say, I guess, wow, I know this board, and you know how I feel, like I think comp plans are very sexy. But there's nothing like getting people out, as you all know, and sending them a letter that says, hey, we're changing your zoning on your property. And so there is some challenge, even with something like a downtown plan, right? It's like, oh yeah, I care about downtown. I go downtown. That's a space and an idea I can put my mind around. When it's, hey, would you be interested in like talking about this like highly abstract future plan that has a lot of like high-minded policies? Like, come on, let's get really excited.
Well, I'm not sure we need to look down on the quality of our citizens. I think we ought to give them a chance. If they're not interested, then fine. We get to say, you had your chance, you weren't interested.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't want to prejudge and say it's just way too elevated for you.
Not at all.
It's way too elevated for me. Okay, I'm sorry.
You're that neighbor.
I'm that neighbor,
Your
yeah.
neighborhood.
You're the one vigilante.
Any other comments on that topic? I think we sort of, maybe you can bring us back an update of the engagement.
Yeah,
for next
yeah.
workshop and maybe just share this
Yeah.
with the consultant or the city manager or
Sure.
whoever you feel like is the appropriate place to log that. Any other member comments today? I don't think so. Can we review the meeting dates, please, Mr. Persons?
For next year?
For this, the remainder of
next
this year.
meeting.
So there was tentatively a workshop next week.
Right.
And then I believe the December meeting is the 16th, but can we just get confirmation on when we need to be available and if it's in person or virtual and?
So we're going to push the workshop for next week, for the 3rd. We're not going to have that. And we're going to use the regular meeting on December 16th to bring additional chapters to you for, I think that should be a relatively light agenda. So that's our plan for that.
Tell me the dates you got.
December 16th.
Okay, and that's going to be a workshop?
That's your regular meeting.
That's our regular meeting, that's going to substitute for December, or?
You're right.
You don't normally have a meeting in November, but,
And we're not going to.
okay,
So it's the only meeting you have left in this year is December 16th.
okay.
Okay, one more meeting this year, and then the meetings next year, I assume, will be just typically for Thursdays unless there's
Correct.
some kind of conflict.
Right.
Okay, so for future planning.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, I have a meeting that on my calendar, it says I have a meeting on the 3rd. Is that something I just made up?
That is canceled now. We're
Okay.
canceling that workshop.
Okay, that's fine.
I did not see that are you saying that that was canceled?
Scheduled it for the 3rd, yes, I guess I missed the cancellation.
Yeah, I don't know that we
Yeah,
got a
we-
cancellation email. I think
yeah, we
that's
have-
why we're talking about it now.
Okay, thank you for bringing it up.
Yes, so,
Okay,
yes, I heard that when I arrived this
Yeah.
evening, so I thought we should clarify our meeting
so
schedule.
so the
So
one we
no
had
meeting
on,
until December 16th.
the one we had on the 3rd is history.
Yep.
Okay, history it is.
We had a workshop with the commission on the 17th of November, and we're pushing that as well.
All right,
That's what's sort of driving some.
so the only obligations we have for the plan board is on the 16th.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
December 16th.
Until.
And then we'll start the 4th Thursday again in January, or you'll let us know if we need another workshop of some type.
I don't think we will. Yeah, I think we're just going to keep the 16th.
Okay, and that will also have the appendices ready?
That's our
with all of the content that we've been looking for
Yep.
in the comp plan?
Yeah, can you,
Okay.
that was on my list of things to ask you, Mr. Persons, after the meeting, but can you,
The real?
yeah, tell us the 101 on that?
Yeah, that's our intent on the 16th, is to bring the appendices as well.
And the appendices are some version of the substantive policies that are currently in the comp plan?
Correct.
Will be everything you've dreamed of, Thomas.
It's like
You don't know what
the
the
current comp plan
You
put
have no idea.
in the appendices of the new comp plan.
But, and by appendices, still substantive applicable policies, it's not like data and analysis. Okay.
We don't want him to get too worked up.
In anticipation.
Okay, with that, if everyone understands our schedule, this meeting is adjourned. It's enough for one day.